we are here with Tooba, who is the CEO and founder of Amoeba.ai. And we're going to dig into why marketers may want to pause before relying on general LLMs for go-to-market analysis and strategy. What's possible today, where purpose-built tools are changing the game. So, Tooba, I'm really, really excited to be diving into this with you because I know you're building something really exciting in this very space. So, firstly, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
Sure. So, Tooba, I am a growth marketer and I've got data like living in Google Ads, LinkedIn, Meta, Salesforce, website, Google Analytics, and I think to myself, hey, why don't I just upload all of this into ChatGPT or Claude and just ask the questions, hoping to get direction of where should I invest next quarter. Does this work, or am I oversimplifying the promise of AI here?
I think just like any other tool, the answer is yes and, essentially, is how I would put it. So first and foremost, the first concern that almost everyone will bring up is if you're uploading all of your data to an LLM, it's leaving you and it's going to the LLM, right? In that sense, like data privacy is an issue, IP is an issue, and all of that. And there are some ways to mitigate that, like if you're working off of like enterprise plans, those are kind of contained. If you're working off of like if your company commissioned them, etc., or you can turn off training, etc. But just be aware of that data leaving you is always going to be something that you need to be mindful of. Now, most people anchored on that as a concern and solved around it. I think one of the concerns that people probably think about but have maybe kind of not really over-indexed on is that hallucinations have not gone away. What that means is in terms of go-to-market data, you can obviously ask an LLM all sorts of questions, but it is very important that the results that you're getting back, especially when it comes to mathematics, that you're able to verify them. Now, from an analysis perspective, LLMs are good at a contained data set and like tossing like a quick analysis on top, right? They're good at that. They're efficient at that. It's something that you can, use them for very often. But now if I look at, you're talking about your ads data. So I look at how expensive that data is. You wouldn't know the averages of like numbers. You wouldn't know like the means and all of that by heart. For all that massive data set, right? So it becomes impossible to say, even if you wanted to check it, it would take you a lot of time to then compile that data and check it. And by that time, you might as well run like proper math yourself, right?
Right.
Now, purpose-built solutions have solved that multiple ways. One of the ways in which they've solved that is, I would say, text to SQL, which is they use LLMs to generate SQL queries, and then you run the SQL query on top of your data. So it requires you having a bit more knowledge about how to write a SQL query. That also has its own set of problems because obviously SQL queries don't like fail on massive data sets as well. And sometimes your SQL query could be massive. Imagine my question is, give me all the trends related to pipeline creation over the last like year and put it in a tabular format. There's a chance that depending on the size of your company that the SQL query essentially will fail. So I would say that purposeful solutions then mitigate that sort of risk. Now at Amoeba, we do something even beyond that, which is we apply a combination of statistical models and neural net in order to kind of get you the math out. It's because we're a data science first product. Our foundation is in that science itself. So the platform is built in a way that we kind of mitigate some of these risks. But one of the biggest things that I warn folks about is now copilots are available everywhere. So they're in every tool and they're in your organizations probably auto-commissioned, right? Those copilots are, I feel like, extremely good for you're in a pinch, you need one quick number, like really fast, directional number. They're really, you can quickly pull. But we've had this incident where someone accidentally pulled some numbers and those numbers were wrong and they ended up walking into their board meeting with the incorrect numbers. So I would say even if you trust an LLM today, verification is extremely
so many real world concerns that one needs to be aware of, right? Like with privacy, with hallucinations, with verifications, that and especially with so much at stake, that the temptation is really strong to write, like just like kind of like write something, with LLMs. The other thing is with LLMs, they don't necessarily ever want to admit that they don't know, right? So they're going to come up with something which looks really credible, right?
Yeah.
So you're kind of tempted to believe it and to kind of like roll with it. But no, I absolutely wanted to come to the source, which is like this is your expertise. As you said, you're anchored in data science, and kind of like clear this up, right? Like for the marketers out there who
Yeah.
are all thinking about that, hey, can I just like upload my data, right, and get LLMs to answer these questions for me?
Answer is not, stop using it. The
Yeah,
answer is like you just have to be cognizant to kind of verify it. The other thing is it's never not going to answer. It's
yeah,
always going to give you an answer, and to your point, because it's intended to, solve a problem in
yeah,
whichever way possible. One of the things that it can be really good at is actually coming up with a framework. So like it makes up numbers, it could make up a framework for you on how would you dissect the data, as an example. So giving you a methodology of that. Another thing that you can use it for against data is doing like a high level data gap analysis. These are the things that I'm trying to do, look through my data and tell me like, what potential data points I might be missing. So again, higher level stuff like that, smaller analyses, non-complex analyses. If you're in a bind, you can absolutely use them. You should absolutely use them. These are tools at your disposal, but it is not a calculator. It's not an absolute answer. And even if it gets it right on day one, like 90% of the time, there's always that day two, it could be like 40% of the time. So that's the biggest advice I give folks is we have a habit of if we verify something for like the first couple of days, we have a habit of just like trusting them, right? Because
yeah.
like once it's right a couple of times, you naturally gravitate towards like, okay, this is a trustworthy source. And then that's where it could mess up. In the example that I was sharing earlier, they verified the first couple of times that the numbers were correct. And then the last report, which was like a summary of like all of the analysis that they had done, is where the numbers were completely made up.
As I'm thinking about it, and I'm again putting myself in the shoes of a marketer, right? I don't know. Like, I don't think I can take that risk anytime because I don't know, like, when is it actually coming in foolproof and correct, right? And like you mentioned, like the validation of it, right? Like, I'm not skilled to be looking at something and just eyeballing and saying, yeah, this looks, reasonably right. Versus if it was a strategy or something else that it's turning around, right? I can like read it and I can get a sense of like, is this along the lines that I think makes sense, right?
Yeah.
So actually listening to you and in this conversation, like again, if I'm a marketer, I'm looking to get some help, right, from AI for analysis of my marketing strategy, right? Like I'm thinking that the risk is too high because it may be right 99% of the time, but even that 1% of the time will get me off on the wrong path, right? Like for a marketing
Yeah.
strategy, and I don't think I can take that. So I'm thinking that no, right? Like might as well invest in purpose-built analysis, software platforms that have the cycles internally to check and double check, right? And
Yeah,
back to me.
exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly. So like a lot of the companies that run analytics and have like LLMs have in the background set up like evals frameworks. So these are evaluation mechanisms where they're checking
Mhm.
for accuracy fairly often. LLM companies like OpenAI, Anthropic, they also have evals mechanisms. So they are constantly checking. But if you think of the volume of usage they sit on,
Yeah,
um, you don't want to be like, in the percentage that it didn't get right, essentially.
no, absolutely
Um,
not. Yeah.
yeah, and then for them, because of that volume, sometimes the numbers can be deceiving as well, because if the volume is really, really high and the usage is shallower, meaning they're not everyone's running a deeper analysis, you could come off as like your accuracy is really high, as an example. But if you're running deeper analyses and the volume is low, every little mistake becomes a thing. So you'll see mechanisms. The thumbs up, thumbs down is a really good example of that. Like if we have that in Amoeba as well, where like if the answer is, in our case, it's not an accuracy problem. In our case, it's like you wanted a different style of analysis. But for most folks, it could be an accuracy related thing. It creates a reinforcement loop that allows the system to get smarter. But you don't, as a marketer, as a person who's like doing a ton, that's not something that you should have to worry about. So I would say that if you are using LLMs for specifically like mathematical style analysis, but if you're using it directionally, meaning I'm just trying to get a feel for what direction is something headed, you can use it. But if you are like, tomorrow I'm going to change my bidding prices based on this math that I just saw today, and you don't verify that math, then that's something that is problematic.
Great. This was definitely top of mind, and I'm hearing this a lot. I'm seeing it a lot on like LinkedIn posts also, where people are coming up with like how they're using LLMs to kind of just go and talk to the data. Whether it's your Google Analytics data or your paid media data or whatever, and get quick help from the LLMs. And that kind of got me thinking, like, is this the right thing to do?
I don't discourage people from doing it, by the way. I definitely want to make that clear. Yeah. And I also understand the psychology behind why people, especially marketers, want to do this. And it's because, marketers crave data, and like generally it's not as accessible. So there's a lot of frustration there. So yeah, like in their heads, if there's a tool where I can, connect things myself, I don't have to go to a data scientist, a data analyst, like an admin, an IT ops person. If I can connect something myself and get like instantaneous reward, there's like a dopamine hit to that. So I always say that with caution, use it, play around with it, use it with caution. And again, like I can't predict the future, so who knows like if in the future like these things evolve, but that's part of the reason why I think that neurosymbolic architecture will be the future, because for business and data related things, you need things to be a bit more deterministic than they are with LLMs. Right? So like think about, you start trusting it and you set it to auto-orchestrate something. And then if you're not going back and like looking at, that data point that you're asking it to auto-orchestrate on, it could lead to like, how many times do we like automations fail? We get emails in our inbox where it's like, hi, parentheses, first.name, parentheses, close. Those are all examples of like, you maybe designed a workflow and something in the workflow failed, and LLMs, are not deterministic. So there's a high likelihood that they could fail unless you have guardrails set up.
As a quick, like a flash rule of thumb, right? Like it's okay, you can start with a general LLM for these kind of activities, and if you're thinking about this particular use case, you need to look at a specialized platform, right? Like what would be your rule of thumb advice for marketers?
I would say that you can use it for, I'm in a bind, I need to something really quick and the smaller the data set, generally the more accurate also the answers become, because it's very structured, it's very small. So I would say a small data set, you can also eyeball whether the answer looks correct roughly or not.
Okay.
For a smaller data set, you should use it in a bind.
Yeah.
Like also quick statements on trends, like, okay, is it an uptrend or a downtrend, or things like increasing, decreasing? Yeah, use it, right? As an example. But then things that require a deeper analysis, unless you have in-house help to set it up in a way where you're mitigating for inaccuracies, etc., that's something to be conscientious about. And anytime things end up orchestrating, or anytime you're taking that and applying the strategy in a way that your monies are moving around, I would add checks and balances in there.
Love it.
And because checks and balances are hard, that's why people move to purpose-built platforms, because that itself is like, a whole
built in, right? Yeah, it's probably built in. Okay, excellent. So this was great. Thank you so much for your quick take on this.